I'm Neela Sambandam. I'm part of the ClearPass product management team. So just to give you, most of you here are already familiar with ClearPass, but for those of you who don't know about ClearPass, just a small introduction. So it's basically policy management for all the devices and users connecting onto the network, right? It doesn't matter if they're connecting from the wired or wireless or VPN. ClearPass is going to do policy management, make sure that the right users and devices connect onto the network, right? And that's at a very high level. And obviously the product has multiple capabilities. And what I have for you today is very, very interesting. So we wanted to handpick a few topics that is the latest and greatest that that resonates very well with our customers, that we see our customers appreciating a lot, and something that's received very well by our field and everyone else. So there's a lot of new exciting things in the product, so we handpicked a bunch of them for you today. So the high-level theme of the whole session is going to be 3 different segments, right? The first segment, we are going to focus primarily on the discovery aspect of ClearPass, where we provide visibility into all the devices connected to the network, right? And in the second section, and also talk about how once you have the visibility of all these new devices connecting to your network, it could be your iPhone or tablet, which is your traditional devices, or your IoT devices, so to speak, as they connect to the network, giving you that visibility. And once you have that visibility, what do you do with it, right? You want to make sure that you do enforcement around these devices so that your thermostat is not talking to your finance server in your organization, right? Doing that enforcement. How do we do that very effectively with this new feature called as OnConnect? That's our first segment. And the second segment is going to be on Insight, ClearPass Insight, which is basically our analytics and reporting tool. And ClearPass obviously has a wealth of context which we gather from all the devices that we hear about. And we also integrate with the huge ecosystem of other security vendors that we talk to. And we have all this rich context about the devices and the users, and being able to get, having access to the device in terms of analytics and reporting is what you will get in ClearPass Insight. So that session is going to be all demo. I'm just going to log into a live ClearPass Insight box and show you what's going on there. And the last section that we have within this session is the ClearPass extension, which is very, very exciting for us. And I'll talk more in detail about what exactly it means and how it's going to ease all the integrations that we do with ClearPass, right? Traditionally, we have taken the traditional route that every other vendor takes, where for any integrations that we have done with like a Palo Alto, for instance, or Mobiline, for instance, or any security vendor out there, we have traditionally gone down the path of making code changes in our monolithic or our code base itself, ClearPass OS itself. But going forward, we have introduced something called as ClearPass extension, which will allow you to do this much more efficiently, right? So now we can integrate with more number of partners very, very quickly and get them out to the customer's hands very, very quickly. So, and I also have 2 demos for the extension and show you about how you can access the extensions and the APIs associated with it. And the Insight is going to be all demos also. Feel free to ask me any questions along the way. I want this to be as interactive as possible. And probably after every session, we'll spend like few minutes so that we can gather all the questions that you might have. Anyway, so ClearPass we have been doing profiling for more than 4 years now, right? What we do is, as soon as a device comes and connects onto the network, we profile the device that connects to the network, and we see what type of device it is. Is it a computer? Or if it's a computer, is it a Windows laptop? Or is it a Windows laptop? If it is a Windows laptop, is it a Windows 7 laptop, right? As granular as you can get. And that is something we've been doing for a while now. And if you look at what we've done over the last 2 years especially, we have been doubling up on the type of fingerprinting that we actually do. Traditionally, we did TCP fingerprinting, SNMP fingerprinting, DHCP fingerprinting. What that means is looking at these traffics and looking at the header of these traffics. Let's take an example for DHCP, right? You will basically look at the DHCP request coming in from a device, and you can look at the fingerprint of the DHCP and you can tell what type of device it is, right? That's one layer of fingerprinting. And likewise, we kept adding more and more, which was like SNMP fingerprinting, TCP fingerprinting using a span port in ClearPass, where you can actually look at the TCP handshake, right? The 3-way handshake, SYNC, SYNAC, and ACK. three-way handshake, and you can actually look at that handshake and say what type of device it is. So we've been doing that. And one thing that we added very recently is something called as network discovery, where you can go and profile all the devices on your wired side, where ClearPass can actually go and profile all the switches in a network. Basically, go do a CDP or LDP to a switch, right? And you will have you'll basically have some level of rights where you can just read the, read credentials at least, and then from one seed switch we can actually jump to another seed switch using CDP or LDP and look at what type of device that switch that is and profile the switch and go on and so forth, right? And once you identify your infrastructure, what that lets you do is now you can go identify what are all the devices connected to those ports, right? And gives you, and use all the methods that you've used so far to identify granularly what are all the devices connected on the wired and wireless side. Right? Wireless, of course, you have a lot more options like the HTTP user agent and things like that, and which you don't necessarily see on the wired side. So we are amping up a lot on the wired side in terms of how we can profile these devices. And one thing that we also are adding right now is the Nmap Scan. Right? One thing we realized is, especially with all the IoT devices coming and connecting onto the network, you quickly see that a lot of these devices use the same stack from an OS standpoint, so they look very, very similar from all the fingerprinting that you do, right? They probably use a Raspberry Pi in the back end, which means they are going to look very similar from a profiling standpoint. But what Nmap offers you is that once now that we have Nmap, we can actually go and see what the device is doing on the network, right? We can actually go and see this device is a thermostat and it's only talking to this destination, which is a thermostat server per se, and it talks using the port A, B, and C. Right? That becomes an additional context or the profile of the device. So that gives you more granularity, which helps you, distinguish what these devices are. Right? So this is something that, and obviously this is just a start, and we are, doing a lot of research in our city organization, trying to understand what are all the new methods that we could be adding to this, not just from a standpoint of just static profiling, but also an ongoing basis, right? And so that is basically what we have been doing from a profiling aspect. We also hear one more thing from our customers is that, especially from our wired customers, that they always say is that in the past, any type of enforcement on the wired side, we have said, go do .1x or MacAuth, right? Because we've always said, ClearPass is, at its core, it's a AAA server. You should be able to do that very easily, no problem. But one thing that we've heard from our customers directly is that I don't want to do .1x because I probably even want to do .1x, but I'm not ready yet because my switches needs to be upgraded, right? My OS needs to be upgraded. My switch probably doesn't support .1x. My infrastructure just doesn't support .1x. Or they've just done a .1x, project back in the days and probably failed, just don't want to do it, right? So there is a lot of hurdles before you get to that point. And MacAuth obviously has its own, shortcomings that customers always, care about. So what we introduced, especially for the wired side, is OnConnect, a new feature called OnConnect, which will actually utilize the profiling that we do to do enforcement on the wired side, right? And the way it works is that you don't need authentication like we have done in the past. For all the enforcement that we have done in the past with ClearPass, it's always through authentication. With OnConnect, the whole process of doing policy, identifying what the device is, doing the policy evaluation, and doing the enforcement is independent of authentication. Right? And the way we do it is, as soon as a device comes and connects onto the network, ClearPass gets notified by the infrastructure saying a new device connected onto the network, right? Using an SNMP trap. And then as soon as we know a new device is connected, what we're going to do is go and do our profiling. Everything that we talked about so far. We go profile the device and see what type of device is it, right? It could be a traditional, printer or a scanner that's connected, or it can be an IoT device, or it could really be any device per se, right? That connects to the network. We identify what that device is, and what we do is we put them through the policy evaluation, which is similar to what we've done in the past, repurposing our very strong policy engine, which basically says, I know it's a printer, so I'm going to put him on VLAN 10, right? I know he's a HVAC controller, so I'm going to put him on VLAN 20, or whatever that might be that the admin define, and restrict their access, from that. And basically, we go and do an enforcement on the switch using SNMP, which is very different than what we've done in the past, which was heavily radius dependent or authentication dependent, right? Any questions? It's very new and exciting for us, and something that we see resonate very well with our customers, and it's already helping a lot to go win large accounts for us, and because they see the value in this, because you start something as simple like OnConnect, which provides you security from day one on the wired side, and then as the security teams want you to go to the .1x eventually 2 years down the lane, you still have some kind of security from day one, and you can, as you start working towards your .1x, you will have some leeway, right? That migration process becomes very, very easy. Any questions? So the next section I have is basically ClearPass Insight. So what we talked about so far is basically having the ability to go do where you can look at all the devices coming onto the network, profile all these devices. And one thing I wanted to also mention is that another reason why when I talk to customers today, no conversation goes by without they asking, my facilities are plugging in all the IoT devices onto my network, and I just want to see what's connected in my network, let alone like control them. Because I have no control over the temperature sensor or the light sensor that they're plugging in, but I'm still responsible for securing the network itself, right? So they always ask us about that. So obviously that's why one of the biggest reasons why we want to come up with solutions like OnConnect, where you don't, because these devices might not support .1x, and even if they do support .1x, they might not have an interface. It's probably a headless device where you cannot go punch in a username, password, or push a certificate. They might not be intelligent enough to do that. So functionality like OnConnect becomes super important at that point, right? And next is the ClearPass Insight, which is basically our analytics dashboard, where you can go and look at all the devices connecting to your network, get any type of analytics that's associated with ClearPass. It can be authentication, it can be guest traffic, it can be profile devices, users, any data that you want, right? And it also has the reporting functionality, and we'll go through and show you how easy it is, right? And I know Peter Lane presented before me, and he said one thing that Aruba always does is give you this wealth of data and put all these new features on top of it and make the product complex. And we're taking a step back and we're realizing, what, we have all this functionality, but it also should be easy for our customers to use it. So as first step towards that in the ClearPass team, what we've done is simplify the whole insight already. Right? And we're working towards simplifying other parts of the product. So let me jump into the demo very quickly. Cool. So this is the new ClearPass dashboard and ClearPass Insight dashboard. And if you look at it, one thing we have tried to do is keep it very consistent with our other Aruba products that's also getting a UX, refresh. And the general theme is pretty much very similar across the products. And one thing I wanted to say is this is not necessarily just a UX thing that we did in the product. It's both back-end and front-end. One thing that we realized very quickly is Insight is a very powerful tool where we were sending all the data from all the nodes in your cluster to the single application, which was feeding all the data and doing analytics. And we decided to send more data to it. So say, for instance, there was a customer who was using like social login. Say 49ers Stadium, for instance, they use like Facebook. You can use a Facebook, Twitter, any login to actually log into their guest network there. And if it's a customer like that who is using their social login to connect to the guest network, they can get analytics on how many users are using Facebook to log into my guest, how many users are using LinkedIn to log into my guest. All those analytics, you can get that from here, which data that we didn't send in the past, we're sending all the data to ClearPass Insight. And also from a backend standpoint, the way we were storing the data, we've made it much more efficient so that the data that you see here on the dashboard is as real time as possible. So I'm going to go, obviously, the way the dashboard is laid out, there are multiple categories, authentication, all the authentication related data is there, endpoint, anything related to your profile or what type of device it is, where the users are coming from, that'll be in your endpoint. And guest is obviously going to, so when you walked into Aruba here in 1344, you had to go through the guest registration, right? And I'm going to show you how, this is actually a live system, not necessarily for corporate, but this is the live system that our whole SE and sales across the globe uses for the demo to our customers. But we can go quickly and see in the guest access how users are connecting to the guest, how the trending looks like, and everything else, right? And I don't want to get into every single category. I'll probably pick one or two and show you how it's relevant. And one thing I wanted to say was this dashboard is basically like clean sheet of paper. What you can do here is basically go here and remove any widget and add any widget from any of the categories. So if you are an IT admin and you care about only certain things, I just want to quickly go and see what are all the devices connecting to my network. That's what I care about the most. Or you might be another IT admin who says, I just want to see who are all the guests, how many guests are connecting to my network at any given time. You can go customize all of that in the dashboard from individual categories. So let's pick endpoint, for instance. So this category, for instance, is showing you all the devices connected in the network, right? It's telling you how many unique devices are connecting at any given time. I can basically change this time scale and look at, it's pretty customizable, similar to any other dashboard that you would see. And this basically gives you an idea. Let's stop here for a minute, right? We talked a lot about profiling. This is probably the core where we actually display that data, where customers can go and quickly get this data very, very easily. And what this is telling you, this is actually, live data, which means it is telling you that from all the devices that we have seen on the network and profiled on the network, these are all the category of devices that we see. Computer, access point, VoIP phones, whatnot. Right? And then what this is telling you, within ClearPass, we have this construct of category, family, and name, which is basically drill down of each of those things, right? Category would be something like a computer, family would be like a Windows, and then Windows 7 would be like a name, just so make it easier. And this is basically how it looks, where you can quickly go and see all the devices in your network. So if you happen to have like IoT devices per se, like a HVAC controller or anything else, you would actually see those also here. And you can actually see like VoIP phones and things like that. And if you go change here, right now it's showing you all the categories. I can basically change it to VoIP phone and see what are all the different types of VoIP phones that are actually connected. What are the vendors who are, that VoIP phone belongs to. And then from here, I can basically pick any of the vendors, so to speak. Let's say Sony. I want to say Android, just so that we can see more data. Yeah. I can quickly go and see, all the type of Android devices connected onto my network, which is very, very powerful, right? And this is the data that's not just relevant for IT to share to their execs, but it's also data that's very valuable for your marketing team, right? If you are an IT, and then if there is a marketing team which wants to go after and do some, campaign in the organization, they can get to this data also. And I heard a few of you here ask questions about, is there like role-based access, where marketing team probably should not make any changes to this UI, but probably you want your IT admins to have all access. You have that option where you can create users, and then users can have read-write differentiated access into the product, into the insight. And another thing I just wanted to quickly show is guest, because that's probably very relevant to what you guys just did today. And as if one of our customers actually already implemented guest in the network, they can quickly go and see all the guest devices connecting onto the network. They can go see stats like how many users are connecting, how many unique devices are connecting, and things like that. And you can also see within my guest connecting to the network, how is the profile of the device looks like, and things like that. Right? Very, very handy tool to go look at what's going on in your network.
From this screen, can I see how many Apple or Android devices specifically used Facebook login, or can I kind of categorize how I drill down?
So basically, you don't have it in here, but you have the ability to, because it's, so within ClearPass, it falls under something called a social login. If you enable social login, then you can see what those are. We don't have it in the widget today, because widget shows very high level data, because not everybody might be using social login. But there is a report, I can show you a sample report, how the report would look like, which will tell you that.
I guess I was more asking of, as I drill down, can I get more specific into these graphs?
Very good question. So one thing that we have today for the drill downs is basically the names and the MAC addresses today. One thing that we are introducing in a very short time span, I would say, very short duration, is basically having the ability to drill down and get to that data. Because we do have the high-level data, which is our dashboard, and we do have our independent endpoint data, which is our search data. We just need to merge that in terms of a list. So that's something that we're implementing also. This is basically a complete revamp of this product than compared to what it used to be. If any of you are familiar with Insight in the past, you will know this is a lot of work. And we achieved all this in 8 months, and thanks to our engineering team, which were very smart. And we are in the process of obviously adding more and more to it. And this is just, yes?
What about the reporting?
Yes, getting to that.
Great graphics, looks real simple, but it really gets down to the reporting, right?
I'm getting to that thing. I'm glad you asked, because that's my next session. Okay, here. So we have, this is the reporting landing page or the home page, so to speak, where we've added this Google Calendar-like template where you can quickly go and see what are all the reports that got generated yesterday and what came out today and what's coming out tomorrow. Without having to go through your boring table, you have the data there, but if you want to quickly go to the data that you care about the most in the recent past, you can get to that data very quickly. Right? These are all already scheduled. So you can go and see as an IT admin, I know tomorrow I'm getting the daily authentication report and TACAX report and a report on the guest authentication. I know those are coming out. Those are the ones that's scheduled. And you have the option to do both an on-demand report and a scheduled report. A scheduled report is something that you say should come out once a week, once a month, and on-demand report is something where you're looking at stuff in the past, right, in the history. I want to look at how my authentication looked like in the past 2 months. Right? That'll be more like an on-demand report. So anyway, so this is basically a traditional table and things like that. I can show you a quick overview of what happened here. This is basically a daily authentication overview report, which means it gives you an idea about all the authentication that's happening in the network, how many devices are connecting, where is it coming from, is it wired, wireless, it gives you all that context, right? And I can quickly, since it's a daily report, we take you to this folder view where you can quickly go and access any report that was generated with the same config. And if you click on this, it should take you to the HTML output. So this is basically the HTML output of the report that we just was already generated. And I'm going to quickly go and show you how easy it is to go and generate a new report. Let's get back here. And let's say we want to go configure a new report, right? Create new report. So let's say we want an endpoint because we've been talking a lot about profiling and things like that. So let's say, for instance, we do endpoint and the endpoint overview. So we also have overview reports for every single one, each of those categories, which has all the data. But we also have sub-level reports, which has like guest endpoint overview or radius endpoint overview, which slices and dices the data, right? And then endpoint overview, let's just give it a name. Okay. And then all you have to do is basically, and you have the option to notify you using email and SMS. This is not just for scheduled report. So if you have a report coming out every once a week, you can have this enabled, right? Obviously. But it is also useful for on-demand report. But say, for instance, we have like large customers and they have so many authentications happening because devices keep roaming between access points and we have re-authentication. So in those environments, your DB size is going to be really big. For us to go query and create the report might take up to like 20 or 30 minutes, right? Depending upon how big your DB size is and what queries we need to make. We don't want our IT admin staring at the screen for that duration of time. So even for those reports, you can basically enable a notification, and we also show you a status bar of how much it's done. So you don't have to be, you know when the report is ready for you to go look at it. And so basically you have these options, and we have something called as raw data, which is very something that I wanted to definitely let you know is in the past, in the older Insight, if you've seen it, our PDF and CSV output had exactly the same data. There was no data summary, there was no graphs or charts or any of those pretty stuff that you see today, none of that was available. Our PDF pretty much had the raw data, the same thing that CSV had, which is not very helpful because customers cannot even do with any in the raw data in the PDF format. So what we did was the raw data will be available going forward only in the CSV. PDF will have all the pretty graphs and charts and all the data summary that we have been seeing in the dashboard, similar to that. Right? And this is a new customer because obviously this is all brand new in ClearPass. So how does the customer know what's in the report? So they can quickly click on the sample report and gives you a quick idea of what that report will spit out when you actually go generate this report. So you have sample reports for every single report template, right? And I can show you the social once we finish this. Okay, so going back here, you basically have these options to do presets and things like that. Times, if it's a daily report, you can configure all of that. I'm just going to do something in the past so that, we can see the report output. Let's say today or yesterday, doesn't matter, right? And it picks you the time for you, gives you a little summary. down there, and then hit next. This page is basically your customization for the report itself. So I want to slice this data based on CPPM. So say for instance, I'm looking at this report without any customization. It's going to give me all the endpoints in the network. I probably want to see the endpoints only coming from a specific NAD, right? Specific switch or a specific ClearPass server. I can apply any of those filters here. So you have the options to go here, and it gives you an option to pick anything. It's an OR. We've had people ask us on social media, I don't have OR options, AND options, so you can just keep adding as many as you want. If anything, we have tried our best to make sure that this product is as simple and easy as possible. So I don't know where the requests are coming from, so I'm not going to apply any filters for this demo. But you get the idea where you can actually add additional filters. You can customize it as much as you want. And then we have our CSV. So this row appears only because I actually selected the, sorry about that, only because I selected the include raw data in the output, right? And if I don't have this, I would not have that in the next step. So the idea here is that the CSV output that you get out, which has the raw data, can also be customized, right? You can pick and choose all the columns that goes into it. You can actually change the order in which the columns go in, and you can add additional columns, whatever you want to be, right? It's very, very easy that way. And this is branding and logo. If you're a banking customer or like manufacturing, doesn't matter who, or hospitality, and if you want to add branding and logo, that's also available. In the past, we probably did not force you to do this branding and logo every single time you logged in, but now we've been more intelligent where we can actually, as you create new templates, we remember all that in the dropdown. You just have to do that. I'm just going to use default for now, and then hit next. That's all the customization we've done, and it gives you a quick summary of all the things you've configured so far. And say, for instance, you forgot something and you're like, oh, I want to add one more filter that I forgot. You can quickly go here and do all the things that you did from the first step right here in one place, right? And when you hit save, it automatically runs the report. I'll actually tell you. So we just ran the report, and it's saved successfully under reports. So you go back to reports, and you can see the report that we generated is available to view, right? And I click on the report, and takes you to the folder view, and then this is basically a report that we just ran. And if it was a report that took longer than what we did, then it would basically show, let me go back up here, it'll basically show you a status bar of how much it's completed in case if it's taking longer. So the idea, what I'm trying to say over and over is that we have gone all out in making sure that the product is as easy as possible from a product standpoint. And this is basically the report that we just generated, where we can quickly go and see, oh, there were 50 endpoints, yesterday for the report, that time period that we just generated, 46 unique users, which means, each user, few users have more than one device associated with them, how many average endpoints per user, and the device category, how many device category, the family, like I said, it's the hierarchy within the product. And how are these devices distributed? We can quickly go and see how many smartphones, computer, and things like that that's associated with the device. Yes?
Comment and a question. Comment,
yes.
This looks really clean, looks really simple.
Thank you.
If that was your objective, you've done it well. You and the team did a good job on that. The failed authentication, I keep on seeing that up on top.
Yeah.
How much information is in there? Because when you have failed authentications, what we try to do is be proactive, and drill down on those reports. And Dr. John, his device failed 50 million times.
Sure.
And then we try to get out there proactive. So, is there any way to automatically create those failed reports, get them daily?
You can do that. So basically, so if you go to the report section, you should have an. So when you go configure a report here, and obviously you also have the options to enable or disable, do any type of actions you want, and failed authentication. You already have one. There's already a stock report that's already available that you just have to go run and schedule it once a day like you want it.
And what kind of rich information is in there? Does it tell you that's maybe a bad?
We can look at it right now.
Inconfigured EAP or?
So this is basically the PDF output that you would get, which basically says how many failed authentications are happening and what's the trending looking like, right? And what are the error types? What is the main cause for these errors, right? Failed passwords, or what is the reason for the failure, and how is it distributed across your services? Because you might have created, this is just a mock, sample report, but the idea there is that you have a service for your wireless, you have a service for wired, right? It could be, Cisco wired, Aruba wired, Aruba wireless. You can basically go and see where is most of my failure coming from, right? Which service is it hitting the most? Easily allowing you to go troubleshoot. And I can go look at things like, who are all top 10 error types and who are all the top 10 users who are who's having the most number of error, right? Maybe I want to make sure I watch them because maybe their device is misbehaving and that's probably why it's failing authentication, right? We'll go in a minute as to how you can watch those clients. But that's basically the idea. So we have created all these top 10 NADs, all these lists, and when we created this product, none of this actually existed. This is all brand new, right? When we created this, the way I gathered requirements for this was I basically went and sat with my TAC, which is our customer advocacy, and I basically told them, you're the ones who are dealing with issues on a regular basis because customers call you when something is broken. And what are the tools that you guys need so that you can go troubleshoot this easily? So they gave me a list of things that they wanted, and that's how we went and built it. So anytime there is a negative scenario, how do we go fix that problem in terms of troubleshooting? That's how we came up with all these lists and things. So most of the data that you ask for should be available. And one thing that we've done is that we've built the product in a very solid fashion. Like I said, we rewrote the backend in such a way that previously, if you needed a small widget or a small template, you had to wait for a year. Now, we've rewritten it in a very simple way that we can go add those in a patch release very easily for a customer. They just need to tell us what they need, and we can go add it for them very easily. Does that answer your question? It
does. You're going through these screens, and it's real smooth. I'm curious, as the system grows, you have a bigger system, does this thing start to get clunky on you?
If anything, we want to keep it. If anything, we want to adopt this to the rest of the product. So if you look at the rest of the product in 6.6, this got introduced in 6.6. If you see 6.6, the policy manager still looks the old way. If anything, this is basically our way of saying we want to change it. We cannot do it. It's a beast that we have built over 10 years. It's not going to change overnight, but we'll do our best to do every single segment, and we'll change as it goes. We basically want this to be your go-to troubleshooting analytics tool going forward, which means there's a lot of functionality that's distributed across Policy Manager and Guest today. We want to start bringing all those under this. Yes?
I was going to make a comment. I think tagging off of George probably makes the most sense here. So I think up to this point, Insight has probably been one of the least utilized features of ClearPass, right? Even though it was good, it was challenging to use at times. I think this, to me, starts to change how this should be used. And before, you would tend to like run it, as part of like the dedicated publisher, right, and just have it running on another ClearPass machine. To me, this seems like it should start to be dedicated and become that central point for everything.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's in the new deployment. I haven't had a chance to go through that yet, but I think that having this standalone starts to make a lot of sense, similarly to like the mobility manager.
Mm-hmm. Today, obviously, we don't want to force our smaller customers to have this dedicated. For large customers, we do recommend you can put it in a separate box because there's so much data that all the nodes in the network will be pumping to Insight. So in a large customer environment, we recommend that, but it's not necessary because we do have medium-sized customers and smaller customers who probably don't want to dedicate a box doing just Insight. So it's just an application that you can enable on a box with already doing authentication.
Right.
So that's why it's pretty flexible. So anyway, I'm going to go back here, and that's basically all I wanted to show here. And the raw data, if you look at it, it's going to be a CSV output that you can, and every time you include the raw data, you will get a zip file which has both the PDF and the CSV zipped into a single folder that you can email and do whatever you want to do with it, right? And you have the options to store all these, reports offline also, as you need, because the retention might be just 60 days, but you can store any of these things using FTP or SCP into another system.
And is it mobile device friendly? Is it kind of?
Yep. You can actually. I can show to you offline once we step out. Yeah. So all our UI work going forward needs to be mobile friendly. Is at least what we are thinking. Okay. So the next thing is the alerting piece, and obviously if it's an analytics platform, it's not complete without the alerting aspect of it, where you can be, with all the data that you have, you should be able to go and alert if something goes wrong, right? I have all these devices connecting to a network, and you asked me about failed authentication. You can actually proactively set a threshold which says, if my failed authentication exceeds certain limit, let me know. As an IT admin. And we've in fact simplified even this as much as possible, and I'll show you very quickly how it's very easy to configure. Just one step, and we have created something called as system alert. when you enable this alert, it enables the 40 other alerts in the backend. You don't even have to configure what it is, right? And the reason why we did this, it's going to enable all the error conditions in the product. If you run out of license, you're running out of RAM, CPU, memory, all those conditions, we've already set the thresholds and it automatically starts alerting you because we don't want IT admins going and changing those thresholds and still running into problems. So we hard-coded, we know what the good thresholds are, we hard-coded all those things. And once you enable this, all that the IT admin has to do is go enable this and they will start getting alerts in terms of like email or SMS. And like I said, we can alert on like authentication and things like that. We also have one more cool feature that we introduced, which is very new to this product. We see just one user right now, but the idea here is that if you have users in your network and if you want to watch them, right? Say for instance, it's your CEO, CTO, like our Dom or Kirti in our organization, you want to make sure as an IT admin, you always want to make sure they have uninterrupted service at any given time. You can go add the users into the network, right? Once you add the users, all the devices that they're using automatically gets added. So if they have 3 devices, 1 tablet, 1 laptop, 1 phone, all the 3 devices gets automatically added here, and you can watch those devices. And if something goes wrong, you can set a threshold and say, notify me before they come and complain something is wrong. Okay? You can do that. And in addition to it, you can also do one more thing where you have misbehaving devices, which is constantly re-authenticating because the driver is old. It's an old Android phone. It's constantly re-authenticating. You want to be, you want to know when it gets on the network. You can set alerts for those too, right? So basically it gives you the flexibility, and few things that we've had customers ask us with this feature is, can I start alerting if a new device type? If I see a Raspberry Pi, I need to be able to alert on it. We don't have that today, but something that we are going to be adding. So there's a lot of use cases. We've started small. Obviously, we want to keep expanding as much as possible. So we call it watch list. And the idea here is I just want to quickly show you how to get to this. You can obviously go and add the users that you want to watch here, right? You can keep adding any user from here, but there's also another easy way to, there's one way of doing it, and another way would be like, say for instance, this user has been authenticating too many times. I go search for this guy, MAC address, and then one thing we've done is autocomplete. So customers don't keep punching things. So we give you all the options as you do, whether it's a MAC address and things like that. So we also fasten things in our end, so it's real time for you. But at the same time, you don't have to type the whole thing also. So we've been doing all those from a user experience standpoint. And this is basically the search output of the user, which is telling me, okay, this is all the information that I want to know about a MAC address, right? And we've heard feedback from our customers after using that this is very helpful, but I would like to see certain, I don't know if you're familiar with the access tracker in ClearPass. It has a wealth of data also. We would like similar functionality to show up here. That is also something that we are looking into. That's basically the idea, and let's see if this guy has a user. Let's go back to the dashboard and see a user. Dashboard, that's why. So what I'm trying to do here is basically look for a username so that I can show you very quickly, or I can go back to a Mac and then go from there also. Sorry. Did I fat finger anything here? Okay. So, basically they've created already an alert for this guy. Okay, I got it. So basically I looked up who the user was associated with the device which is doing the most number of authentication. That's what I was trying to do here. And I'm going and looking up for the user. And the way you would set up so you're looking at the user is something he's interesting because he's doing too many authentication. Like we said, he's a user that you care about. All you have to do is go and star and unstar any of the users. They get automatically added to the watch list. That's another way to add users to the watch list. So, and the rest of it is just administration stuff. Like I said, you have the option to offload and save these reports offline somewhere else. That's an option for you. And that's pretty much all I had in the insight portion. Any questions?
What about when you're adding users to the watch list, shared devices? Mm-hmm. Are they going to automatically be assigned to that user? Or is it smart enough to say that multiple people log into this device throughout the week?
So today, like I said, this is like baby steps. We're like, this is a brand new feature in the product. Today we can add only users, but we will be extending this to add devices. Because today, one thing we thought was, let's simplify as much as possible. Let's add the users and automatically adds the devices that the user belongs. At times, you probably don't want to watch all the devices that the user has. You probably want to just watch one device or like a shared device use case that you talked about. We don't do that today, but that's something easily we can add to the product.
Okay, cool.
That's a good use case also. Yeah.
Question? Oh.
Yes.
Well, as a comment to that, I mean, it would be cool to pull up that watch list based on either the tags are embedded in ClearPass or pulling it from a AD group or something too, right? I mean,
that is the request I've already had, where I say there's probably an exec AD group, and can you add all of that? But also the issue is Insight is basically an analytics tool. ClearPass has that, Policy Manager has the context of which AD group they belong to. I guess we should figure out a way to pass it along to Insight so we can do that, because we basically act on the data that, Policy Manager has already asked, so we can do like an API call internally, maybe do that, but that's an ask we've already had, so that IT admins don't have to add each and every single person, just add an AD group into it.
That's what I was thinking, the tags, right? So you have the ClearPass tags
yes.
on the device or something. So you could have a rule that's authenticating and writing a tag, and then from Insight, look at the tag.
That's a very good point, and people have brought up this thing before, so we'll definitely look at it for the next major release. Thank you.
So on your search, it seems like every manufacturer has to document their MAC addresses in some unique and different way.
It can take any format.
Any format, that's what I wanted to hear. Okay.